Hi there. This is Visitations Conversations. The purpose of this program is to provide inspiration to people aspiring to go deeper into the world of comics and entertainment. Please check out the channel for interviews that range from comic creators, podcasters, cosplayers, and filmmakers. My name is Scott Larson, and I am the creator of the independent comic book series Visitations. Visitations is the history of Chicago as seen through the eyes of the residents of the city's oldest cemetery. It's part history, part adventure, and part horror story, all rolled into one, kind of like the Untouchables meet Indiana Jones in a graveyard. If you'd be interested in reading a digital copy of the first issue for free, please email me at visitationscomicbook@gmail.com or click the link in the description below. So today I have a guest I've talked to a number of times, and this person, when I first started out wanting to draw comics, he was the person whose artwork really talked to me, and the person who I always kind of wanted to emulate. And the artist is Ron Frenz. He's worked on Spider-Man, Spider-Girl, Star Wars, Thor, Thunderstrike. He's done some stuff for SitComics, The Blue Baron, and Heroes Union. And Ron has a new Kickstarter that ends in a couple days, and so he wanted to come on and talk about that. So I'm going to invite Ron on. Ron, if you would, I am asking you to unmute yourself. All right. So I think we can hear you, but we can't see you yet. There you are.
No. Hi, Scott. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it. I am one little correction. It's an Indiegogo, not a Kickstarter.
I meant crowdfunder. Sorry about that. Yes, it is Indiegogo.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about Indiegogo is if you do well enough, they let you keep it going for a little while after it's over with.
Oh, terrific. I didn't even know that. I just liked it because it has go-go in the title, and it puts me in mind of Nancy Sinatra. But anyway, I'm old. Yeah, I think we're coming down to the last 4 or 5 days. I think we're wrapping up. I believe I did a count, and it came out Thursday. But yeah, it's I don't know. Do you want to jump right in and talk about the project?
Sure. So this, well, first of all, this is your first attempt at crowdfunding. And as I told Tom DeFalco, who's your partner in this, once you get a taste, you're going to become addicted, and you're just going to want to do crowdfunding for the rest of your life.
Oh my God. It just seemed like so much hard work. Can people get addicted to hard work? I didn't know that was possible. Jeez. No, I mean, we got involved with this new publisher, Apex Publishing, Apex Comics Group, and some of the people that they're involved with, Liquid Avatar, that are involved in NFTs and some of this new digital technology stuff. And, you know, the crowdfunding aspect of it kind of came about organically from those initial conversations, and a lot of it was done by the publisher and the editor-in-chief of Apex Comics, Mariano Nicieza, the brother of Fabian Nicieza, and he did most of the legwork and all of the late nights coming up with the different tiers, and consulted with Tom DeFalco about all the different stretch goals and all this kind of stuff. I just want to draw. I mean, and I've been very spoiled and very lucky to be able to just do that in my 38, 39 years in the business right now. But yeah, I mean, as far as the project itself, I'm incredibly invested creatively in what we're doing and what we're finally getting out in front of the public, because that's what storytellers want. We live off the response from the readership, as you know, and so that I'm very pleased about and very eager to get that feedback and go out and shake some hands at conventions and get this in front of as many people as possible.
It's fist bumps nowadays. Nobody shakes hands.
Oh, that's true. Handshaking is probably never coming back. Yeah, I always liked the elbow. I didn't mind the elbow thing. That was kind of cool.
So,
yeah, keep that in mind.
so talk about the project. What's it about?
Well, it's about science and computer gaming and all kinds of things that Tom and I really don't understand. But mostly it's about a young boy's imagination, which we understand intimately. So it's called the R.I.G.H.T Project, and R.I.G.H.T it has the periods between it. What's that? An anagram? What's the thing with the periods?
I don't know. I only knew the asterisks from MASH.
Oh, okay. Yeah. When each letter stands for a word, I don't know. Is that I don't know what that is. I don't think it's an anagram. It's something else. But anyway, R.I.G.H.T stands for Reality Integrated Gravitic Hologram Technology. And it is invented by a gentleman named Poindexter Click, who goes by Dex, or Professor Click. And he has developed this technology whereby by manipulating magnetic fields, he can give a holographic image a gravity center. And by giving it a gravity center, it effectively gives it mass. Now, he doesn't have the technology fully perfected. It's not marketable yet. But this young guy who is a friend of his niece's, who lives with him, his niece's name is Carlin, and the friend is named Jeffrey Lopez. He has taken the avatar that is part of the initial experiment and redesigned him as a superhero, whom he calls Mr. Right, because it's the R.I.G.H.T Project. And so he's redesigned him as a superhero in his own version of the program, and has been using him to introducing him into his video games and all this kind of stuff. But he's able, in a moment of dire need, is able to activate Mr. Right into multi-platform reality and into reality as a holographic figure with mass that is able to interact with other humans as a superhero. So he is a digital daredevil, an avenging avatar who works with Jeff Lopez. He refers to Jeffrey Lopez as Player One, which I always found very Jack Kirby. I when we came across that idea, I really enjoyed it. And so Jeff is able to through Mr. Right live out the same fantasy that many of us comic fans have of being having the power to help others and do the right thing. The bad aspect of it is that because we don't quite understand why Jeff is the only one that can do this, he is bonded with Mr. Right. So any injury that Mr. Right undergoes also affects Jeff. So he makes a deal with Carlin because they can't tell Professor Click about this because he would refuse to let Jeff use the program. So he makes a deal with the niece Carlin that Carlin joins the team and always watches Jeff's back as a balance with telling her uncle what the real deal is. So Team Right is basically Jeffrey and the Mr. Right avatar and Carlin. But when we came up with the title, The R.I.G.H.T Project, it's helped us broaden the scope of the stories a little bit more, because now it's about the technology a little bit more than just the Mr. Right character. And, so we will be finding out the origins of the technology, and we'll be finding out more about Professor Click and his background and the backgrounds of the more supporting characters. If you've read the work by Tom DeFalco and I over the last 30 some years, and you've enjoyed it, then we're fairly confident you will enjoy this. It has our intention when we undertook this project was to kind of bring back kind of a Joe Simon, Jack Kirby vibe. Do you ever read Boys Ranch and Stuntman and the early Captain America stories that they were doing in the 40s? We wanted to bring back that sense of fun. of adventure and fun. And if you want grim and gritty, this is not the place to go. This is, as Tom DeFalco would say, hoo-ha superhero action in the mighty Marvel manner, that kind of thing. But it's going to be fun. And opening up to Indiegogo, we were very gratified at the initial response, and we're very happy to say that the book itself has been funded. But yeah, I mean, there's still plenty of room for people to jump on board. We have a few more days to get on the train, and I can guarantee you that if you relax and let yourself enjoy it, it's going to be fun. And we'll take the ride together. For the first time, we're all in this together, and everybody that jumps on board is an investor, is a part of this adventure and this journey with these characters. So we hope to get as many people as possible involved, so we can send these books out to as many people as possible and spread the word.
So is this just one issue, or is this an ongoing series?
Well, this crowdfunder is just for the first issue. It is a standalone in and of itself. It introduces the characters. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to more than one adventure in the course of the stories. We're going to a format of like 11-page stories. So there's two 11-page stories and a 5-page bonus adventure and another 5 pages that's part of our stretch goals down the road. So yeah, there's plenty of material as a one-shot, but it is designed to be an open-ended series if indeed the audience is there and if enough people are interested. So I would love to develop these characters even more. We have plenty of story ideas. A second issue is underway just in case, but we'll have to wait and see what the response is. In a situation like this, since the investors themselves, the readers themselves are making the financial investment, it's not like a corporation taking a shot. It's them letting us know what they would like to see. So we hope to. I mean, it would be great. It would be fun.
So, so this is creator owned completely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Co-owned by myself and Mr. DeFalco. Yes.
So, so if you guys say you did this and you publish it through Apex, and you decided, hey, you know what, we want to like draw this in chalk on the sidewalk for the next issue, you could go and do that without having. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
In fact, at one other time in the past, we started developing this a few years back, and what ended up happening was at the time, Tom DeFalco employed some agents on the West Coast, and they were shopping this around. And at one point, Warner Brothers was interested enough to ask for a series Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And it got, the series Bible was written by people that were not Tom DeFalco or myself. And there was some back and forth about that there was some miscommunication there. We got word that even the Rocks people were looking at it at one point as a vehicle for him. And, so it became this situation where if there's really a chance that this could be multi-platform, or it would be TV or movies or something as well as the comic, should we hold off and wait and see if one of these deals closes to then tailor the comic, so we don't have, you don't want to start out with different versions of your character out in the marketplace, or if there's a version of the character that's going to be TV or movies, that's naturally going to be a broader audience than just the comic. So you don't really want them to be two separate versions of it or anything. So there was a lot of discussion about what to do with it. And at the time, it just kind of, Tom and I became busy with other projects, with Marvel and DC Comics, and we were sorry to abandon the project, because at that point, it wasn't going to happen publishing wise without a much greater effort, and none of those other situations ended up happening. So we kind of put it on the shelf in lieu of other work, of other paying work, and feeding ourselves and our families, and it kind of left it behind. But when we were approached by Apex Comics, it's still a project that we're very invested in, and it's one of my favorite character designs that I've done. It's fairly basic, but it speaks to my usual design aesthetic, and it's a lot of fun. So if you have a chance, go over to Indiegogo. Even if you're just curious, go over to Indiegogo, and there's quite a bit of artwork shown there and everything. And on my Facebook page, I have Mr. Right work up, and you can check it out there. It looks like fun to me. Of course, that's only natural. What can I say? I'm a proud papa. What can I say?
So, I drew a blank again. I keep drawing blanks today.
You looked so thoughtful there for a second.
Yeah, it was great.
I was waiting for one of those insightful, deep questions you always ask.
So how many characters are in this?
Well, it's a family of characters. The avatar itself, like I said, we recognized early on that the avatar being an avatar, it's going to take a while for people to warm up to a computer program. So we didn't want to make the story about the Mr. Right character. The story is about the characters around him, about Professor Click, about his niece Carlin, about their family dynamic, about Jeffrey Lopez. His mother is a cop. His father is an investigative reporter for the local newspaper. They live in a city called New Hope, USA. And the city is named after the family whose last name is Hope, that run a business called Hope Worldwide. And the latest scion of this family is Apollo Hope, who is a young man very full of himself. And Professor Click helps him run the company because Professor Click was best friends with Apollo's father. And if you're wondering who would name their son Apollo, the father's name is Jupiter Hope. So he and Professor Click were the young men in the garage with the dumpster diver computers that initially instigated some of this technology. Okay. Jupiter is no longer in the picture. Apollo is now running the company. And, Dex is kind of the Dutch uncle that kind of keeps Apollo from straying too far from his father's goals. And Apollo can be a little gray in the whole integrity realm and stuff. So he's going to be a wonderful source of stories, as are the mom who's a cop and the dad who's the investigative reporter. And we try to populate these stories with people that will feed us story ideas and people that will feed us potential, and that's what we've done. It's been constructed in much the same way Tom and I have constructed all our stories for Marvel and DC over the years. One of the stretch goals currently is a how-to comic, a digital comic that would basically include the plot, the pencils, the script, the nuts and bolts of putting this the origin story together. And so if you've ever been interested in getting involved in comics and seeing behind the curtain at how everything's put together, then please, help us reach this next stretch goal, and that will be part of the package. So it really is Tom and I wanting to share this concept finally with as many people as possible. So I think it's going to be a special outreach, a special, it's the most personal story and character and series that Tom and I have ever done. And that's and that's saying a lot, because Thunderstrike was our blood and sweat. And even our Thor stories, once we introduced Eric Masterson and Spider-Girl, especially, Tom, a lot of Spider-Girl's stories grew out of Tom observing his own niece and brother, and their father-daughter relationship. And, so we've never been shy to use our own lives as fodder. And this is very much the same thing, so it is our first, we're putting our names right on it. The project is called Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz's The R.I.G.H.T project. And, we're taking our, my 38, 39 years and Tom's almost 50 years of comics history, and we're putting it out there on the line and hoping we can get people to respond.
So I think that really sounds great. I want to make a comment, and then I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
And so the first comment I want to make, you mentioned Thunderstrike and you mentioned Spider-Girl and these characters. I think the difference between that stuff and this project, and one of the reasons why I personally feel, as far as your work is concerned, and why I really wanted to have you come back, is this is your project. This isn't something you're doing for Marvel. This isn't an offshoot of a character that already exists, nor is it a relative of a character that was, that already exists, so you watched on cartoons. This is something that's brand new. So this should, in theory, be way more personal than anything else that you've worked on. And I'm not going to ask you whether it is or not, because that's prying a little bit.
Well,
But
no, in theory, you're right. Okay. The only thing that colors that at all is that Tom and I we draw no lines between something that's creator owned and something that's done for Marvel. We were never, I don't know, we were never smart enough to make that distinction. When certain creatives in the industry back in the 90s started to really draw that hard line about, well, I'm keeping my really good ideas for self-publishing, Tom and I would look at each other and go, "You can do that?" I mean, it was just one of those things that, when we were paid by Marvel or DC Comics to create, we created, to the best of our ability, every minute of every day. There was never something that held back. Having said that, and I'll let you get back to your thought in a second, but having said that, I will admit to you that when Tom and I started to decide, when we decided to do a creator-owned project, Mr. Right was a name and an initial idea that was in my sketchbook for MC2 for the Spider-Girl.
Oh, interesting.
It was a potential background character that would have been like the MC2 version of like Daredevil. We had Dark Devil already, and he had gone darker. But this, when I say Daredevil, this was a stuntman, Captain America, bounding across the city and cannonballing into a group of bad guys type of a character that was, very much swashbuckling and everything like that. Now, the design was not fully formed yet, but the name and the initial figure of the character was something that we hadn't gotten around to using him in MC2. We had no intention of using him in the MC2 at that point. The MC2 had gone away at that point. So we didn't pursue him that way. But when we started thinking about the type of character we wanted to do, the very direct, square-jawed, smiling adventure character that we wanted to do, we pulled Mr. Right out of the sketchbook and started to develop him as a solo character. And that's where it did come from. So there's always some kind of creative overlap with some of them. I'm sorry. I'm going to let you return to your thought now. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Oh, and by the way, in case you saw something floating on the screen, my cat has jumped up into my
I saw him. I saw his tail
yeah.
and I saw his head. You're so
There he
lucky.
is.
Oh, he's gorgeous.
He's
That's well,
gigantic.
as you know, I lost my cat a few months ago and
Right.
miss her terribly. The apartment just seems so empty without her, and I deeply miss her. But anyway,
So I'm curious. So you developed this idea a number of years ago, we'll say.
okay.
And do you think that, you mentioned you had gotten busy, but do you think that this time right now is a better time for it to come out than it would have been, whenever you originally had the idea?
It can't be worse.
I hope not.
What I would say is that my sense is, and I'm hoping this is something that might help a little. My sense is that nostalgia is more powerful now than it was initially. That the sense of nostalgia, especially in the comics publishing world. I mean, when you talk to a lot of people who are still buying comics, there's always going to be the people that are very much fans of what's going on right now, and I don't know exactly how large that contingent is, but I know on my Facebook page, a lot of my followers are people who liked my stuff and followed my work with Tom DeFalco through, from Spider-Man up through Thor to Thunderstrike to Spider-Girl, but aren't really reading what's going on currently and have kind of lost that, as much as it sometimes pains me how old the comics buying public has gotten because of the price point. If you're trying to do a crowd-funded project, those are the people you're trying to reach. You're trying to reach people that have some disposable cash that are willing to invest in your concept and to see it through and to read it and enjoy it. So in this way, we're kind of leaning into the nostalgia for the kind of work that we always did and still do. The work I'm doing for SitComics is considered very much, actually publisher Darren Henry calls it nostalgia because it's brand new work with a fresh voice and brand new characters, but done in a craft conscious style of the late 60s, early 70s, because Darren was a comics fan in the 70s. So I'm seeing more and more projects that are appealing, especially independent projects that are designed to appeal to people who are hardcore comics fans, but are easily 30 plus, who aren't getting the same charge out of the current publishing of the majors, of DC and Marvel and even Image to a certain degree, and who are looking for something that scratches the itch of 70s, 80s comics publishing. So I'm hoping we can lean into that and take our place in that race for positioning with entertaining that particular crowd. Because when you're with Marvel and DC, we were always interested in trying to get the younger people engaged, because if you're not bringing new fans in, you're going to die. That's just a simple fact of nature. But with a crowdfunding project, you really are relying on an older audience, a veteran audience that may be willing to invest in seeing this idea come to fruition. So yeah, I'm hoping we can appeal to that crowd and spread the word. And it is an all ages book. It is, as I said before, it is not grim and gritty. But I think there's a desire for that, a desire to just get like a 70s Marvel DC vibe going and have some fun with these characters again. I mean, I know that's personally if I go to a comic shop now, I spend much more time in the back bins,
Sure.
rebuying things that I remember having as a young child of 6 and 7, that the covers are burned in my brain and I don't have the copies around anymore, and rediscovering those, as much as buying some of the newer material, unless of course I did a variant cover, in which case, then I get a free copy. So that's not
Right. And then you read through those books and you're like, this is the most.
And I read through those books, and at least it keeps me engaged. It keeps me able to partake in some of the discussions that are going on online all the time and everything, which is fair, because everybody's going to love the comics that are being published when they discover comics. For me, that's the late 60s, early 70s. For the people that are coming in now, they're going to love what's going on now as much as I loved what was going on then. Neither the twain need to meet. We just need to respect the fact that it's all valid. It's all canon. And I like to keep track of what's going on with the characters, because I don't want to be one of those people that just says, well, I haven't read it since
Since 1975.
Pick a date. Because I was very engaged in the Marvel universe when I was actively working at Marvel up through the 2000s. So,
Sure.
With Spider-Girl, we were kind of in our own little corner, and we didn't have to pay as much attention to what was going on in the 616. But, as late as 2010, we did a Thunderstrike miniseries that was a 616 version of the Sun, Kevin Masterson, taking over as Thunderstrike. And so we needed to be versed on what was going on in the Marvel universe. And, it's a little hard to just rediscover all of that in a weekend while you're trying to come up with a plot, that kind of thing. So I like to keep my antenna up and pay attention on social media,
I think that that I'm gonna go back a little bit to the question I was asking about timing.
Okay.
And the first thing, so when I went to the Indiegogo page and I took a look and I saw Player One, the first thing that popped into my head was Ready Player One, which was that book, and it became a movie. But was Player One part of the original concept?
Player One was part of the original concept, and I never knew about the book. And we originally conceived this before the movie.
Sure.
So I was only going by the, when you see the arcade games, and there would be the knobs and the control sticks for Player One and Player Two and all this kind of stuff. And it sounded very Jack Kirby to me. It sounded like one of those wonderful Kirby moments of the quotation marks, Jeffrey Player One Lopez, and Mr. Wright refers to him as Player One in a very literal, practical way. And again, I fully admit that I had a technical advisor early on, a gentleman named Dean Fukurata, who worked at one of the comic shops, that was giving me a lot of background on computer play and the different terminologies and stuff. I'm not a computer game head myself, and neither is Tom DeFalco. And that's not going to be the thrust of this. You don't even have to understand gaming to the degree that really helped your enjoyment of, say, Free Guy, because it's all going to be right there on the page for you. And it's, more than science fiction, it is going to be superhero fantasy. So none of that is required. You don't have to do any primer for this. It's not, you don't have to be a gamer any more than you had to be a skateboard thrasher to understand the New Warriors. You know what I mean? So, there's always, we may have a hook, but the hook does not have to go that deep for you to enjoy the material. So I will say that.
It's really interesting because I had mentioned the Player One thing when I saw the Indiegogo page, and some of the other stuff as well. And what the reason why I was asking about do you think that timing? is because, sometimes there's a perfect time in society for something to come out.
Right.
And I'll go back, the Spider-Man books have brought Ben Reilly back.
Yep.
Actually, they did it some time ago, but now he's not a villain anymore. But one of the things that was happening when he was originally around, and I think that it was Tom DeFalco that came up with this, Dr. Octopus had a girlfriend, and the girlfriend would disappear. Her name was Stunner. And she would disappear. And what it was this woman who was overweight, but she had this VR device on her, and she would project herself into places. Now, when I was reading that in 1994, that made zero sense to me because it was so far ahead of its time. But if I read that now, it would feel more modern because we're not quite there, but we're close enough.
Right.
And so when I was looking at the Indiegogo page, it reminded me a little bit, not necessarily of that particular concept, but the whole idea of this is something that's happening. So whereas you're talking about, well, we're doing this in a craft in a way that is more, 1960s and Jack Kirby and Mighty Marvel, the Mighty Marvel Manor. When I read that Indiegogo page was, this sounds really modern. Because it feels a lot more modern than it might have felt even when you came up with the concept a few years ago.
That's a possibility. That's a possibility, and if that happens, that's fantastic. But I do agree with you that we are much more versed in virtual reality, and of course, what's in headlines these days, the metaverse, and meta, than we ever were before. So I think that will, help people. If that helps people embrace this concept, that's fine. But ultimately, what this is a superhero comic with a new approach to how do you have a square-jawed, smiling paragon of virtue in 2021 without being satirical about it. Before Chris Evans played Captain America, you had people in the media telling you that nobody could ever pull that off. Superman had to be dark. Superman had to be deconstructed for anybody to buy him. All this kind of stuff, and yet Chris Evans plays Captain America, and suddenly the world opens up and says, "Holy crap, it is possible." They hire Tyler Hoechlin for the WB to play Superman, and it's sir and ma'am and smiling, and wow, how about that? Heroes can be heroes, and nobody was happier to see that than me and Tom DeFalco, if I may say. And but that was a lot of what we were dealing with at the time we were developing it. Is kids believe in heroes because kids have not been beaten down, and kids don't have feet of clay yet, and they don't understand how the world will treat a hero at times. So that's one of the reasons that we took the approach that we did, and we want to see this through Jeff's eyes. And in a very real way, he is the hero of the story, merging with the technology. So it's going to be interesting, and things that have happened since we originally developed it. If we are granted the chance to continue with this, then there are things that have happened in the meantime that will inform the technology moving forward, because everything is still in a developmental stage. One of the stories that may be part of the package by the time the Indiegogo ends, we showed Jeff with an eyepiece that was actually a precursor to like the Oculus goggles that people have now, that are like a view of virtual reality, where he was seeing everything Mr. Wright was seeing. And if we are given the privilege of continuing these stories, that's something that I intend to pursue. That may become part of Jeff's look moving forward, is something more immersive that puts him on a level. Since he has Carlin watching his back, we've all seen the videos of people playing virtual reality in their living rooms and destroying their own televisions and destroying, because nobody's there. Why people are filming them instead of watching their back, that kind of thing. So that's exactly the kind of technology taken to a fantasy level that we're dealing with here. And Carlin will be the person to watch Jeff's back while he's fully immersed virtually in Mr. Wright's situation. And so yeah, there's a lot of aspects of the technology that I think the casual reader will relate to a lot more than when we originally developed the concept. I don't disagree with that at all. That's actually a wonderful point to make. And, hopefully it's all going to be timing. It always comes down to timing. So many projects that I've enjoyed over the years, whether they be film or comics or whatever, sometimes suffer from the timing. It always pays to remember when you're a comics fan that the Hulk was canceled after 6 issues initially. The Silver Surfer only went it was one of the best. It's considered one of the best comic series ever done by Stan Lee and John Buscema, and a plethora of terrific inkers. But it only went, what, did it even go 20 issues initially? I don't think it did. I forget exactly how many issues it went, but the Silver Surfer was canceled. The Hulk was canceled. Timing is everything. And characters given time to develop is all about that. Cheers was as a TV series that ran for almost a decade. It was a flop at first. It had to be given time for people to get to know the characters and to fall in love with the characters. Many series are the same way. A lot of the classic series were not hits at the time, that kind of thing. I mean, you really, it especially when you're involved in a creative field, it pays to, keep in mind, that there were people who passed on the Beatles, things like that. I mean, we actually have a story in mind that involves a character like that in Mr. Wright, somebody who passed on the technology, on investing in the technology initially, and is now, a disgruntled genius in his own right, but somebody who was shamed and pushed out of the industry. So he actually has become a villain that we would meet pretty quickly if we're, again, privileged to continue with these stories. So, I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had with the technology and using it as an avenue to the type of heroic character that I think when push comes to shove, I don't think we have a problem with smiling characters. There are modern versions of that. A lot of the characters that Dwayne Johnson plays in his films and stuff are warmer, smiling characters. I'm actually quite surprised that his first foray into superheroes is going to be Black Adam. It's going to be an anti-hero, because he was tailor-made to play a character like Mr. Wright or Doc Savage or something like that. Just his on-screen persona would have been perfect for something like that. But I'm sure he's made the right choice. He's been making all the right choices. So who am I to second guess that gentleman? But anyway, but that's very much our aesthetic and very much our thinking, with these characters, is to, they're basically, I love superhero storytelling and the superhero genre specifically, because I think it's a great way to tell stories about the human condition, about because I think all of us inside would love to have the the ability to make a difference or to help people, given the opportunity, given the platform to help other people, I think most people would do that. I think that's why we embrace heroic characters, selfless characters. I mean, I think that's in all of us. For some of us, it's been beaten down a little bit, and maybe some of us wouldn't take that opportunity. But I think for the most part, human beings are decent creatures, and have a sense of right and wrong, and would choose the right when given the opportunity. So superheroes are just more flamboyant representatives of that desire.
So you've mentioned a couple times, if we're given the chance to move forward with this. So I'm curious of something. So it sounds like you have a number of stories in mind, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to ask how many. Although I could, but I'm not going to. Are you guys imagining this as like a monthly or like a biannually, or how would you?
Well, originally, I mean, Tom and I think, because we've always had people backing us, we've always had corporations backing us. Our natural tendency is to think monthly or bi-monthly,
Sure.
some kind of a regular schedule. That doesn't seem to be a deal breaker anymore in the comics publishing field. So at this point, we are waiting to see what the ultimate response is to the first issue. And, since, as you're very painfully aware, when you do an Indiegogo like this, you're your own distributor, so we're going to see what our success rate is as far as getting this in front of as many people as possible, not just the investors, but building that base for a possible second foray. So, a lot of those questions are still very much up in the air. A second issue is virtually fully formed.
Okay.
We have story ideas to run for several more issues, and so it's definitely a possibility. It's probably something that would appeal enough to Tom DeFalco to keep him from retiring completely.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Sal Buscema is pretty much retired at this point. So if we continue past this first issue, Sal will probably not be as active. I mean, I'd still love to get him to be able to do covers and things like that if he would so choose. But the gentleman has certainly earned his retirement. Mm-hmm. If anybody has ever earned a retirement, it's Mr. Sal Buscema. So, there is a part of me that it's it feels unfair. I've been so spoiled with such a wealth of partners in this thing, and Sal and I working together for as many years as we have on Spider-Girl and so many other projects and so ancillary projects along the way, that it was very hand in glove. The partnership was just so ideal for me, and he was very much a part of this initial concept, and not having him there gives me pause. Finding another partner to be a part of this is a daunting what's the word I'm looking for? A daunting
proposition.
Proposition. Thank you very much, Scott. That gives me a little bit of pause right there, but I'm sure it can be done. Mm-hmm. And like I said, given an enthusiastic response from an audience, potential audience, then I think Tom and I could see continuing indefinitely. But that's yet to be debated.
So if you go into a second issue, would you do another crowdfunder? Or would you just be like, I'm going for broke, I'm going to just pay for this out of pocket and take them to conventions?
I don't foresee that.
I didn't think so.
I don't foresee the out-of-pocket convention thing as much. But again, we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, there's also the thing with tiers and making promises and sweetening the package, and then coming through on those promises. That is a process that Tom and I have yet to go through for this first issue. So it's probably better to talk to us when we're in a hospital ward recovering from the first round before you ask us about the second round. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's also possible that Apex Publishing will take off through these crowdfunders and be able to afford fronting subsequent issues as well. Anything is possible, and I would not deny anybody the possibility of this actually becoming something where a profit is turned and we can continue to entertain as many people as possible. But we'll just have to wait and see at this point. Mm-hmm. But I can fully back and guarantee you some fun if you go to Indiegogo.com and look for Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz as Mr. Right, or the Right Project, and take a look at some of the artwork that's involved and some of the story descriptions, and pick a tier and join us on the ride. And thank you up front. I mean, believe me, I am not used to having to come on to programs like this and
beg for money.
And beg for money. That is not something that I'm comfortable with, and it's not something that I ever thought would necessarily be a part of publishing comics. But here we are together. It's just a very strange thing. Tom and I have talked about that several times, that we never necessarily saw that as part of our this phase of our careers. But I'm glad to say that I can guarantee some fun. So, people pay for less. Let's take a shot together,
And then the link for the Indiegogo is down below. I'll tell a little bit more about that.
I very much appreciate that. And like I said, if nowhere else, if you can't find it on Indiegogo, go to my Facebook page, and the links are in my profile picture, and the links are in my my title page, and all this kind of stuff. Everything's up there through the balance of the campaign.
So the town is called New Hope.
Yes, it is.
Which is a nice Star Wars feel too, by the way. Although Star Wars wasn't called that when you and I first saw it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Actually, I took the name from a real. There is a New Hope, Pennsylvania, that's on the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. That is a wonderful little small town that has a very vibrant artists community. Mm-hmm. And I used to go there with a friend of mine, and just there's a whole section of the town that is restaurants and craftspeople who are selling their wares in different shops and stuff, and independent artists and stuff, that we used to go there and visit. And it's a great place to spend the day and everything. And the name spoke to me as, again, what Tom and I are trying to accomplish with our view of heroes. Mm-hmm. And so it's, I'm from Pittsburgh, so I picture it as being, on a river, a Pittsburgh-sized metropolitan area, and and it's already got its own couple of superheroes, because we developed New Hope for the Right Project, and then Tom DeFalco went ahead and used it for Randy O'Donnell is the Man. Mm-hmm. So it turns out that we're already starting on building a superhero population in New Hope. But it was fun to me to develop like the history of the city, and the fact that the Hope family, are a part of the early days of this city back into the 1700s, and Hope Worldwide as some kind of a massive global industry that that is into many, many different things and many, many different story possibilities. And nothing is more fun, and I know you'll agree with this, as the moments of creation, the moments of the inspiration, the moments of tying the ideas together, the moments of designing things, the moments of thumbnailing, the moments of actually penciling. Each moment of creation is why we do the things we do. And I am so psyched to finally get these concepts and these characters and these ideas out in front of people, because we don't work in basements and draw these things just for ourselves. I mean, we're storytellers at heart, and that telling is the most important part. You need to have somebody to tell it to. And my small circle of friends are sick and tired of hearing about these ideas and characters. Let's send them out to some other people too.
How many? So I want to ask you a little bit about the design process.
Okay.
And actually, before I do, I want to show you something. And you and I have had a number of different conversations. And in our first conversation, which was about a year ago, I asked you about model sheets, because I was asking you how you plan things out. Now, and I'm gonna steal the interview away from you for just a moment and talk about myself. But when I have come up with the concept for things, my first idea is to just sit down and start drawing. And I don't do a whole lot of planning, and it's ridiculous, but that's the case. Well, when I asked you about model sheets and you said you had done them, I was like, oh, I should probably do that. Maybe I ought to do that for my stuff. And so it took me a year, but I did start doing model sheets of my characters, and that is thanks to you.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad. Good.
So
do you find it informing your work? Do you find it like it makes you more comfortable with?
Yeah, the thing about it is, on the surface, we keep talking about, in theory, and I think that it's very, 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 very important. On the other hand, part of me is like, am I just wasting time doing this when I could be working on pages?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the push and the pull that I have. And I think that's really the difference between being, and this is going to sound ridiculous because we're all professionals to a certain degree if you're publishing something or working on something, but it is the difference between a true professional and somebody who's, playing. And I think that once I sat down and started doing that, I realized a lot of different things fell into place for me. And so it was really, really interesting. So I don't know if I would have gone in that direction had I not asked you that question, but thank you for your answer.
Well, yeah. No, and I completely understand what you're talking about, because the proof is in sitting down and drawing the book. Mm-hmm. The only real need for model sheets is if other people are going to be handling the characters as well. So, but I never did like turnarounds for any of the SitComics characters. There were one or two design drawings that were done that were able to be passed around to other illustrators and everything for the other SitComics books. But for me, what I do find them useful for is that I always talk about when different illustrators are handling a character and it becomes like a game of telephone, where the character becomes a bit more diluted as it's passed around down the line, and everybody's working just off of the last guy's version instead of the first guy's version. So I find that that's actually possible just for us too, that can happen if we don't keep an eye on what our original design intent was. The characters can sometimes fall into generic appearance because of deadlines, whatever number, but it's always good for me to do model sheets for some of the secondary characters, because I had a model sheet for Spider-Girl that was the build I wanted. And but deadlines can be a bear. And I am the last person to tell you that I hit that mark on every shot of Spider-Girl every time. There are a handful of shots that I was able to accomplish with Spider-Girl on deadline that look like what I wanted that character to look like. And in many cases, it was a shot or two where I was able to spend a little bit more time to polish it, to make sure,
And maybe even to think about it.
What's that?
And maybe even to think about it as opposed
to give yourself a moment to check the reference, if it's based on a person, or check the model sheet or something, because in the day-to-day turning out the pages, you don't always have a time for that. You're absolutely right. Sure. But and it's also like a hairstyle or something can become you can either become generic, or you can get into a habit of drawing it and find that when you look back at your reference, boy, I really am losing that. I picked that because there was a certain charm to it and a certain way that it fell on the shoulder, whatever it is, it keeps you on point with the character. Again, it's not something that's going to inform every single shot every single time, but I think it's important to have it taped up on the wall, and to have it there in your field of vision, for different characters and everything. The only time I ever did a turnaround for Blue Baron was there was an issue. It was issue 2, I guess, which will be out through Diamond soon, where he was basically battle damaged. He was fighting a villain that was able to tear up the costume a little bit, and I made a turnaround for myself of the battle damage to keep it consistent from panel to panel to panel, and to keep it in mind for myself, and I had it on my desk while I was doing those pages, because sometimes I was doing pages out of order and things like that. So those kind of things as well. But and the only other time I've really done a lot of turnarounds is if you're dealing with action figures or statues, or again, any situation where other creatives are going to be involved, and you need to translate the costume. You need to show the costume. So I'm glad. I mean, if it's helping you at all, I'm glad. But you're right. You also can't get so tied to it that since we're only using them for ourselves, they shouldn't be seen as being limiting either. I know what my characters look like, whether I do a drawing of what their back looks like or not. I have a sense of what the back of every character looks like. The cape is covering it most of the time, but no, I know what the back looks like if I need to draw it. But sometimes you need to draw it if somebody else is going to do it too. I mean, well, I'll give you an example too with Blue Baron. The way I've designed the character, the hat and the mask and the wig are all one unit. Mm-hmm. They're all connected. They all stay together. They stay on because the mask and the wig are all one piece that he puts on with the hat, almost like a helmet. Okay. Mm-hmm. Almost like Captain America's helmet. Even the co-creator of the character, even the creator of the character, Darren Henry, doesn't seem to know that.
Okay.
and in plots, in plots to me, he has said he gets his hat knocked off, and I'm going, and when I'm drawing it, he goes, no, he doesn't. It's because the hat's connected to the mask and the wig. But he has written plots for other illustrators doing other books where you'll see Mr. Wright getting his hat knocked off, and that wasn't part of the original design. So, c'est la vie. That's how quickly things can get lost in a game of telephone, So as much as anytime I show him with the hat, mask, and wig off, and they're all shown as a unit, either hanging on a door or hanging on the side of a chair, that's something that's mostly just in Ron's head, because it's not necessarily part of canon, because it hasn't made it into the other books, and it's no harm, no foul. That's what's so fun about comics. Guess what? It's not real, so nobody's going to get all screamy yelly about it or anything. It's just one of those, it's one of those small things that can get lost in translation sometimes. I used to always, I have a running thing with an illustrator, Stephen Butler, and Gordon Purcell, who all worked on the Silver Sable character. Because when I originally designed Silver Sable, she had a birthmark, right, a la Marilyn Monroe, who was very much a visual cue for her. And so often on the comic art, it would be removed because people just thought it was a mark on the board. Stephen talks about the fact that he used to always try to put it in, and people would, somebody who was going in and cleaning up the boards in production would take it out, that kind of thing. So, and also another thing was when we originally introduced Silver Sable, she was only a little over 5 foot. I mean, Spider-Man, who's only 5'10", was always shown to be taller than she was. Although in one of my early sketches, I had her taller than Spider-Man before I decided, no, what I liked about her being a little over 5 feet is that all of the guys that worked for her, the Wild Pack, were all like big mercenaries, big bulky mercenaries. And I love the idea of somebody who's like 5'1", 5'2", ordering around these, 6 foot, 6'5" mercenaries. So by the time she first appeared in Spider-Man was taller than she was, which put her, 5'5" or shorter. And that's not necessarily something that survives that game of telephone. I mean, look at Wolverine. I mean, he's supposed to be short. How many illustrators actually draw him looking like he's stocky? Right. Looking like he's short. Not a lot of them do. Not a lot of them. And even when they hired an actor who became Wolverine for generations of Wolverine fans, that the height issue was not something that they were willing to make a big deal about, that kind of thing. So it is what it is. It's part of the creative process that, I'm sure there are things with other people's characters that I have screwed up myself. And I can remember at one point, I can remember several points where people said, this is the case with this character. And I went like, oops, that kind of thing. So, I'm as responsible and as guilty as the next guy of sometimes playing my role in that game of telephone, that kind of thing. Though I try to avoid it by going to the original versions of the characters as much as possible. But, when things have evolved story-wise, well, that's different. There have been canon reasons for certain changes, and you don't pick up on them, then that's on you, that kind of, and your editor, and your editor. So, but anyway, that's always the fun of, when you're the only person who's actually, Tom DeFalco wrote all but one issue of the amazing, of Spider-Girl, period. Right. And that's incredible. And then, the one issue that was written by somebody else as an inventory that was slotted, real Spider-Girl fans to this day still treat it with disdain because there were things that happened in that story that didn't seem consistent. Dan Slott takes a lot of heat because of Spider-Verse, where he handled the character, and there were certain things that didn't ring true to her hardcore fans, and admittedly to myself. So, and then at one point, Tom and I had a chance to do some Spider-Girl, and we leaned in to some of Dan Slott's things as kind of devil's advocates to, well, maybe this isn't our Mayday. Maybe this is, this is all about alternate realities, and maybe this is a slightly different Mayday, that kind of thing. And so, what are you going to do? I remember a time at Marvel where anybody who didn't agree with a Doctor Doom portrayal would just say, well, it was a Doom bot. Right. It was one of those kind of things. So, only in comics can
Mhm.
can you do those kinds of Bobby Ewing waking up, Pam Ewing waking up and Bobby's in the shower things,
Right.
and actually make them part of continuity, that kind of thing, because the boundaries of the Marvel universe really don't exist. So
Well, I think some of that goes back to what you're saying about, actually, this might have been part of our conversation before we started talking about fans being part of the business. And you get, for example, the Doctor Doom thing you just mentioned, and I know where that came from. And you had a creator who was very strict on the rules, and there are some people who are like that, and one of the names that pops in my head is Alex Ross. When you were talking about Wolverine, he did this like sketchbook where he was going to do the future of the Marvel universe, and he saw Wolverine being played by Danny DeVito, who is a very small guy.
yeah.
And but he also was one of those people who was like, this is the way it is, and you do not get off the road, you do not swerve off, you do this or else.
Mhm.
And there are some of those creators that are like that, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing,
It's selective. I mean, it's any creative endeavor is subjective, and this isn't any different. I did a post on my Facebook page about the fact that I'm a stickler for certain things, like the Thing from the Fantastic Four is man-sized because that's the way Jack Kirby designed him, and so when he's drawn as 12 foot tall, that doesn't really resonate with me. I can deal with a 10 foot tall Hulk, but Ben was always supposed to be a tragic human figure. So I like him being wide, but I like him being human sized, that kind of thing. The Kingpin, I actually think should look bigger, than Ramita drew him, not quite as big as Frank Miller drew him, but bigger than Ramita drew him, that kind of thing. And so, even the things I'm a stickler for, it's very fluid sometimes,
Mhm.
Yeah, things like, does Zabu, Kazar's Sabretooth, have a tail or not? Jack originally drew him without a tail. He had the little stub of a tail. And, that's how Sabretooths, they're almost more bear-like than they are tiger-like. But then plenty of illustrators came in and drew Zabu with a tail because they were drawing a big cat. They were drawing a tiger or a lion or something like that. So I don't know. If I were editor-in-chief of Marvel, or are those things I would even decide deign to care about? That would be my first memo as editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics: is Zabu does not have a tail; he has a stub, and that would be the beginning of my reign of terror. And Spider-Man has webbing under his arms, so like those kind of things. I mean, it's hilarious to me that every time I post a commission of Spider-Man, because I always draw the underarm webbing, I think it's a unique and really interesting
Mhm.
design element that other costumes don't have, that that kind of thing. And every time I do it, somebody thanks me for it. So somebody in the thread will make a big deal of thanking me for it, because so many artists don't include it anymore. And it's a small thing, but it's always been part of the mystique for me. So I'm always going to include it.
Well, I think that comes with the game of telephone that you were talking about. That and the costume being black and then it turning blue over time. And then pretty soon it's just all. I remember a quick side note, in the mid to late 80s when Spider-Man only had the black costume, and some people did it as blue. They couldn't
Yeah.
even put like the black in, and it was just like, it's but I think some of that comes from timing too. It's like, do I have time to color this in, or is this due like now?
Partly, I think partly you're right, but I mean, yeah, that also was a time in comics where blue was so locked in as the highlight color for black, that
Mhm.
now that we have a consistent gray that works and everything, that's very rarely is it used. blue as much as it used to be, you know, like for Superman's hair and things like that. Because you're right, so many characters. I mean, that originally the Beast, when he mutated further into the furry beast, he was gray. Then his fur went black. I don't know if it's ever been as it ever. There was never a moment where it was mentioned in story that it went from black to blue.
Oh.
He be blue now. You know, the same was true with Nightcrawler. You know, at some point somebody put it in a script that his fur was blue, but no, that's not what it was originally supposed to be. I know. Storm's costume that was designed by Mark Silvestri that ended up on the X-Men cartoon as white. That was supposed to be black leather. That when he originally designed it, it had plenty of black on it, but they chose not to put a highlight color on. They chose to just let the highlight color be the white of the page. But slowly that became a white costume. I mean, that's exactly, that's the definition of the telephone thing we were talking about. And it's just a few examples of it. And yeah, Spider-Man's costume was very similar, you know, because when Tom DeFalco as editor brought back the heavier blacks and the underarm webbing, you know, he was acknowledging, okay, Peter's had several costumes along the way. That's fine. So some of them were blue, but now we're going to go back and say that the costume is red and black, and it has underarm webbing. But that only lasted as long as he was editor of the Spider-Man titles, you know, that kind of thing. Because when they came up with the black suit and everybody was making a big deal about the black suit because it had blue highlights, he said, Spider-Man's costume was already red and black. Why is everybody making a big deal about it? I said, because there's too much material out there where it's just red and blue. Come on, even I refer to it as the old red and blues. I mean, you know, there's no denying that. So it's fascinating. It's a fascinating part of comics as a visual medium because you don't really see that in other visual mediums. You know, I mean, comics are unique that way, that characters can evolve and shift and, you know, either be victimized or helped by those kinds of visual evolutions, you know, that kind of thing. So, but again, that's why my personal philosophy is going back to the original designer. You know, be it Ditko or Kirby or Dave Cockrum on Wolverine or any number of characters you want to talk about. I mean, I always try to go back, especially when they were doing the Handbook of the Marvel Universe. I would call the editor and say, do you like the one I remember specifically was the Cobra, the villain, the Cobra, Thor's character. As I called the editor and I said, do you want me to use the last appearance of the Cobra as reference? Or do you want me to use the original appearance of the Cobra by Don Heck as the reference? And the editor said, what's the difference? I said, considerable. And he went, oh, well, then I guess go with the original. And I went, okie dokie. And it was very different from the way he had been portrayed down through the years, you know. And one of the people that changed it was Jack Kirby. It was originally designed by Don Heck, but one of the people that was responsible for it evolving pretty quickly was the way Jack Kirby handled the character. So, you know, and Jack was famous for creating characters with a lot of tchotchke, like the Destroyer. He had studs on him and a lot of lines and stuff. And then within the course of his first appearance, by the end of the story, he had lost all the points and all that kind of stuff and was just a figure with lines on him for decades under other artists until Walt Simonson brought back all the tchotchke, you know. So when I draw the Destroyer, I look at the first shot of the Destroyer, not those, you know, not the last one. So
how many pages was Kirby doing a year?
I couldn't even
or a month.
Yeah.
Doing like 100 pages a month or 200 pages a month or something.
I mean, that's what blows my mind too, because at one point Sal Buscema was penciling and inking both Hulk and Rom, and then penciling other things on the, you know, as needed for Marvel. And I can't even imagine keeping a schedule like that. But I mean, God love these guys. It's incredible, just incredible.
So a real quick, I've got one more question for you. Actually, I had a bunch of questions, but we're starting to run out of time here. So when you came up with New Hope, have you drawn that all out in your sketchbooks? Do you know exactly where everything is, or
No.
is it
No.
okay?
No, I do find, because even when you like design apartments and stuff in your head, or to put a floor plan down, because Peter Parker, we knew what his apartment looked like when we were on the book. And I had that annual where they, did a floor plan and showed the different rooms and stuff. Right. I always had that annual folded open to that page on my desk every time I was doing a sequence with Pete's apartment. But that can also be a little limiting, depending on how much you want to be a stickler, that kind of thing. So I usually have a sense of what the house looks like Pete and Mary Jane's house in Spider-Girl, which was
right.
Aunt May's house. I have a sense in my head what that looks like. I've seen other people do it where that's not what it is. And I've seen other floor plans where, that's not quite what it is. But I have never done a floor plan myself. Pat Allen and we never did that. So no, as far as the city goes, it is inspired by aspects of Pittsburgh, being a riverfront city and things like that. But we never got deep into it enough to really establish any real landmarks or anything. If we do, then great, then I'll try to keep it as consistent as possible. But for my part, I knew in my head what Eric Masterson's apartment looked like and how it was laid out. And again, the Parker residence, I know pretty well, but not enough to keep it consistent, but not enough to limit myself. And believe me, the fans notice. I mean, they notice when it's consistent and they notice when it's not, because there were some inconsistencies between Pat Allen's portrayal of Mayday's room and house and mine. And it's been covered on blogs and Spider-Girl message boards. And it's wonderful. I mean, the fans do all the footwork, they do all the legwork, and we benefit from it. But we always tried to be consistent in the posters. And, when everything Pat had established, I never deliberately ignored it. I mean, she had a one big full-length mirror in her room that was a consistent prop. Her working desk and where it was in relation to the bed, I think, was fairly consistent. But then I read these blogs where they go, well, the northwest wall would be this and the southeast wall would be this. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, these guys really are paying attention, and it can be intimidating. Yeah. But I try not to get too anal about it. I'm so anal about other aspects of the characters that I try not to get too anal about that, because again, it's not something that if anybody else handles the character, it's not something that they're going to realize. I mean, you can't really walk around with your little notebook of your character and be that jealous of other people playing, because ultimately that's what it is. It's playing. So, that's why I have never called Darren Henry and lectured him about Blue Baron's hat. It's connected to his mask and his wig. I've never had that conversation with anybody other than a couple of friends of mine, because, it's and you and visitations conversations audience, because it's one of those things that you just accept when you're in a collaborative medium. I mean, okay. I mean, am I going to stop doing it that way? No, because in my head canon, that's the way the thing is built. That kind of deal. So I'm going to keep adjusting the plots to my head canon. But does that mean I'm going to force other people to do it, other illustrators to do it? No, not a bit.
Well, I imagine that when you're on your 7th or 8th Indiegogo campaign for the next Project, you'll probably have all of this stuff down.
Scott, I at this point in the project, I don't even know if that's if you're blessing me or cursing me.
You gotta dream big, right?
Is that the dream big? Or is a sugar daddy walking up to me on the street?
You know, when
saying,
The Rock
"I will
is
fund
knocking
you"?
on your door saying,
Yeah,
what does
exactly.
this place look like? Forget Black Adam, I'm doing this. Then you're going to
There you
have to
go.
come up with
There you
something.
go. See, then that's, thank you. That's a blessing. That would be a blessing. Yeah, I don't know. At this point, we just don't know where it's going to go. But it's going to be fun, and we could use all the company we could get. And I can't thank you enough for making yourself available for this conversation and for this opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
Anytime. And the thing that I was really thinking was, I thought that it was great to do the conversations about the Heroes Union, and I saw you on, or I listened to you on a lot of other forums, but I felt when I saw that you were doing this, I really felt this is it. This is the one that's special. This was the one that's really, really, really special. And I had to horn in on it, and I had to be a part of it. So
Not at all. Not at all.
I wanted to make sure that you were supported as much as possible with this. And I know that I was able to do a contribution. I am planning to do another one before it ends to help you guys get over another finish line. And we'll go from there.
Well, thank you. You're very hands-on, Scott. I got to tell you, when Tom DeFalco, when you made arrangements with Tom DeFalco to do an interview, I enjoy our conversations, because when it comes to the questions that you ask and the thoughtfulness of those questions and the way you're always trying to get to something creatively that those aren't part of every conversation I have on these podcasts. So as many podcasts as I do, and as much as I enjoy them, I love watching your mind work, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of your questions and the fact that you're trying to get to something in the process. That is very unique amongst these podcasts, and it's very much appreciated. And I hope your other viewers appreciate it too.
Oh, thanks. So I think we'll end it there.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much. And then so tell us again about where to find the project.
Okay. You can either go to Indiegogo and look for Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz's The R.I.G.H.T project, or it might be simpler to go to my Facebook page. It's just Ron Frenz on Facebook, and the profile picture and the cover picture click on either one of those, and they're both about Mr. Right, and they both have a link to directly to the Indiegogo page. And if you're able to contribute, please do, but take a look at it, see if it's something that might be of interest to you. And like I said, my only guarantee is that it will be fun. That's all I can guarantee. If you don't enjoy fun, you might not even enjoy it. I can't speak to that, but it will be fun.
Awesome. And then also, if you look below, the link for the Indiegogo for Ron's Facebook page and his Catskill Comics page is in the description below. And so we're going to leave it right there. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Scott.
And